So now to uncover the last piece of the puzzle. Time to implement our final HTTP verb that we're going to learn in this course, our HTTP delete. Now we've covered get to go and get data, post to create data, put to update data, but if we want to delete it altogether, we should then use a delete request. So our form is fully set up to handle those delete requests. We can say really delete and press OK. However, our component callback isn't set up with a subscribe. So much like before, we can say .subscribe, pass in our function which gets called, and we can say console log deleted successfully. So once that has been deleted, we'll then get our console log, and our data structure then needs to be updated by removing the item that was then deleted. So let's go into our service and get this implemented. Now this is fairly straightforward. We can say return this.http and then this delete, generic type, donut. Now much like above where we have API/donuts and then payload ID, we need the exact same thing. So we can say API/donuts/ and then interpolate that payload.id. Now because this is a delete request, you can see if we hover over here, we can just pass in the URL and then any options that we want to specify. We don't need to pass in the item body that we want to delete because we're just instructing our REST API via the ID of the item that's the item that we want to actually destroy. So once that has in fact happened, we can then jump into our pipe, pass in a tap. Now what we'll do is just bump down our tap for the moment so we can see things a bit more clearly. Now inside of our tap, we're going to supply a function and then simply just move our existing logic inside. So we can say tap, supply the function. Now we don't need our console log from before, but we do need our this.donuts equals the filter assignment. So we can take this, drop it inside. So then we have our tap, which as soon as we have deleted, we have the items payload that we can then reference because that is the ID that we are then referencing in the URL when we are making that delete request. But we're also using our filter. So we're looping over each individual donut and we're then using not equals the payload ID. So we'll then get a brand new array back with all the items apart from that payload, which we've already deleted. So with this in mind, let's go and save it out. Now we have a piece of data in here which we created, which is our new donut. So you can see that we have this ID. I'm actually going to use this one because we don't really need it. We've just used it for demonstration purposes. So we'll add that one in, save things out. We can go into our browser, really delete the new donut, press OK. You can see that our delete request has gone through. If we inspect element, we'll then have in the console, deleted successfully. So at this point is where we will eventually use the router, go back to the home page because the donut has then been destroyed. But we can then confirm in our db.json that the new donut, which we then just referenced, no longer exists. We can take its ID and you can see that we have no results. So that has successfully been removed from our database. You can see how it's really nice and clean in our component definition that we have the donut going down, the donuts coming up via create, update, and delete, and then inside they're just simple one-liners. So you can see how a container is an orchestrator between other components and our data. It's a middle layer and it provides that handshake between our components which allow the user to interact with our application and our data structures and the way that we communicate with APIs. So really we shouldn't have any logic in here that's going to change data structures. We're simply delegating it off to a service and then binding those responses accordingly and letting the components do the work and the services then handle any updates. So that's it for this lesson. We've implemented create, update, and delete, and we've also implemented some nice reading functionality, and our service is pretty much there. We've got some nice state management inside of here. We've got some simple array assignments through a get to get all of our donuts. We've then got a nice observable of read, and then we learned about how to pipe. We're then finding that donut. We've then got our create, which then uses a post, some state management, an update, some further state management, and then our delete. So you can see how by using some plain JavaScript inside of here, we're not only taking care of our API request, but we're taking care of all of our state management. Now this is great for us because behind the scenes, let's assume that we have this service injected into many components. We can make sure that all of the data and the state is being synchronized throughout, and Angular makes this seamless for us and super easy to share that state. So for the rest of this chapter, I want to show you a couple of things with our HTTP client, how to handle errors, some request options that we could optionally pass into our requests, and also how to retry some requests should they fail.